Wondering how many days you need to explore Glacier National Park? This guide has you covered, as well as everything you need to know before you go. Hey there, I'm Alex from Alex on the Map, and since I grew up right by Glacier National Park, I have a pretty good idea about the things you need to see when you're on your trip, as well as some things that maybe you can bypass. This itinerary that I'm giving you will cover about a week, but we're going to front load the activities, so if you only have 1, 2, 3 days, you're going to be all set for those. I'm also going to give you a little bit of information about where to eat, where to stay, and more when it comes to your Glacier National Park trip. That being said, this park is amazing and huge, and there's just so much to do. So 7 days isn't even going to cover, even come close to covering what you can see if you spend more time. But realistically, we all have work, we have things we need to do, so kind of breaking it down into day by day hopefully will help you plan your trip. So before we get started into the meat of the itinerary, I'm going to answer a common question, which is how many days should you spend in Glacier National Park to get the full feeling of it and to experience the highlights? I usually recommend for your first time to Glacier to spend at least 3 days. If you can do more, that's fantastic, but 3 days will give you a well-rounded picture of what you can experience in the park and just kind of the general idea of what it's like. You can experience the park in 1 day, and I'll have a video that you can link to and see for yourself, but definitely if you can spend more time, the better. If you have more than 3 days, even better, and we'll go into an extended itinerary at the end of this video, so if you do have more time, you know what to see. All right, let's dive into the Glacier National Park itinerary for 3 days. And again, you can just play with this too. These are just suggestions of things that I think you should absolutely see in your first 3 days in the park. Keep in mind that this itinerary is based on the west side of the park. If you would like to do it in a different way, you can always do it from the east side and reverse. For the first day, I have it pretty chill for you. I recommend going to Apgar Village first, just to get the lay of the land and to see this charming little spot. There's some good restaurants and ice cream. Definitely recommend the ice cream. That is just a great introduction to what the park is like, and you'll see a lot of that Swiss style architecture that you're going to see throughout the entire park, so just a great intro. Also, something you're going to want to know this year, which I have an entire video about that I'll link to in the description, is Glacier National Park reservations. And Apgar Village is where you will need to know whether you have your reservations or not. The good thing about this year in 2024, and if you're watching this in future years, I would recommend checking out other videos I will probably have about this topic, but you can actually explore the park without a reservation from Apgar. You just need to hop on the Glacier National Park shuttle, which I also have a video of, and you can explore the park as much or as little as you like via shuttle. If you don't want to take the shuttle and you would prefer your own car, you will need reservations once you get past that Apgar Village entrance. Apgar also has a great little visitor center. It's just a fun spot on the south shore of Lake McDonald, so definitely recommend you take the time to spend your morning there enjoying. Speaking of Lake McDonald, that's going to be next on your itinerary for your first day. You're going to head to the Lake McDonald Lodge. It was built in 1914, and again, that Swiss style architecture is in full display at this spot. This is one of my favorite spots in the park, first and foremost because it's a great bathroom spot before you head out on your other adventures. And two, it's just so historic. You walk in and you just see all this stuff that hasn't changed since the lodge was built. If you are planning on doing the Lake McDonald boat tour, there's a dock just outside the lodge that you will meet at to start your tour. After that, you're going to head to the Trail of the Cedars Avalanche Lake parking lot. It really depends on your physical level and how much energy you plan on spending at this portion of the day. Trail of the Cedars is just a nice, lovely nature walk that's accessible, absolutely beautiful and great for kids. But if you're feeling a little adventurous and you want to see one of the best hikes in Glacier for bang for your buck, then you're going to want to continue on to the Avalanche Lake hike. I do want to warn you that parking for this is really limited, so you might have to come back throughout the day to see if you can find a spot. Usually the best times are in the morning or in the evening, so if you want, you can also reverse this day where you do Avalanche first, get lunch at Lake McDonald Lodge, and then finish at Apgar Village. Day 2 is going to be a little bit more adventurous. You're going to drive the famed Going to the Sun Road, go up to Logan Pass, and probably take on a hike if you're up for it. To be honest, some of the best hikes are located at Logan Pass, and everyone knows it. It's really difficult to get parking, which is a big reason why they have reservations. Not to scare you, but it might be better to take the shuttle on this day just so you do not have to worry about finding parking. After you've entered in from the west side, you're going to go past the lodge and past the Avalanche Lake trailhead where you were yesterday, and you're going to continue on Going to the Sun Road up until you reach Logan Pass. I'll have a whole video about Going to the Sun that I will link to in the description below, just so you can get an idea of how cool this drive is and where you should stop along the way. That being said, I would take your time and enjoy it just because it is one of the highlights of the park. And in order to see everything that you want to see, it probably will take you at least an hour just to get up from Avalanche Lake. It's absolutely beautiful. Again, this is why so many people come to Glacier in the first place, is just to drive this drive. So it is a major highlight, and feel free to take your time because it is windy and there are some steep drop-offs. So if you are afraid of heights, take your time, go slow, or instead take the shuttle so you don't have to worry about any of that. Once you reach Logan Pass, you've got a number of different trails that you can take on. Much of it will depend on your physical level and how much you want to take on when you are in this area, but there are trails for every level and they're just all beautiful. My recommendation is the Hidden Lake Overlook for families and kids who maybe don't have a ton of experience hiking but still want some beautiful views, and the Highline Trail for more experienced hikers who are okay with some steep drop-offs, but it's an incredible hike. And the great thing about the Highline is you can do as little or as much as you want before turning back to Logan Pass. I also recommend that you make a stop in the Logan Pass Visitor Center. It's got a cute little gift shop and some information about Logan Pass, and there's almost always a park ranger to answer any of your questions or guide you to a hike that would make sense for you. On day number 3 of your Glacier National Park itinerary, we're gonna step off the hiking trail today just because we've already been hiking a lot and there's a lot more to explore inside the park without having to be on the trail. I highly recommend you spend a big portion of your day today rafting because it's a great way to see the park from a totally different angle, and if you're in those summer months, it can get really hot in Glacier, so this is a great way to cool down. I also have a whole video about Glacier National Park rafting and what you need to know that you might want to check out, but you should know that there are options for all levels of rafters, whether you're beginning and you want to do more of a scenic float, or you want to do some class 2-3 rapids and enjoy a little bit of adventure. There are a number of different rafting companies. I recommend Glacier Raft Co. just because that's what I've used in the past and they're super professional and I love them, but any rafting company in the area is going to be fantastic. Fly fishing is another great option if you want to be on the water and you want to experience Glacier a little bit differently. You might not necessarily be in the park when you're fly fishing, but you are in the general area, and the outfitters here know exactly where to go and can take you there. If fly fishing has been on your bucket list, this is a good spot to do so. If fish and water aren't your thing, horseback riding is also another great option for a tour in the Glacier area. There are tours that are led in the park by Swan Mountain Outfitters, and you get to experience the park in the old-fashioned way of how people used to get around from place to place within it. There's a lot of different options, from a half-day tour to a full-day tour to a multi-day tour. So I recommend checking out their website so you can get a general idea of what they offer. I think that pretty much sums up, if I only had 3 days, what I would do in Glacier. But because I love it and I'm a hiker, I would definitely recommend, again, if you have that extra time, to make it happen, especially since that part of the itinerary only covers the west side of the park. This part of the itinerary will cover some of the east side. And again, you can pick and choose what works for you with your itinerary, but because the east side side can be a little bit more difficult to get to. That's why I put it kind of toward the end. Day 4, you're going to head to the mini glacier area of the park. This is personally my favorite area because it has some of the absolute best hikes that you can experience. If you are a hiker, you're probably going to want to head to the east side at some point. My number one thing to do is hike the Grinnell Glacier hike, and this hike is just perfect. It's just perfect. There's nothing I would change, or it's just gorgeous. You will have to get up super early in order to get a parking spot, and also keep in mind that the mini glacier area of the park in 2024 also has a reservation system. So you either have to get up before 6 a.m. before that reservation starts, or you have to have that reservation ticket in hand when you show up so you can get in. Again, I highly recommend you check out my video on Glacier National Park reservations because this covers all of that and you can be a little bit more prepared before you go. If you are hiking Grinnell, I do recommend that you bring some bear spray with you, not to scare you, but I did run into a bear on this trail a few years ago and I needed to spray the bear off. In most cases, you won't have to do this, but because we got there so early, that was part of the deal. That being said, it is bear country. There are a lot of bears in many glaciers, so knowing how to use your bear spray beforehand can make a big difference when you're on the trail. After you finish Grinnell, I definitely recommend taking a boat tour, and the one you'll want to take is the Swift Current and Lake Josephine boat tour. If you'd like to shave off some of the time on your Grinnell Glacier hike, you can actually get on that boat, have it take you over those two lakes and start the hike from there. Or you can just take it as a boat ride, which Daniel and I loved. You know, we did it last year and it's a really fun way to learn about the park and get some incredible pictures and views. When you're done, also head back to the Mini Glacier Hotel. Again, like the Lake McDonald Lodge, it's historic. It's absolutely worth the stop to grab lunch or just to relax out on the porch and to see the beautiful view of Swift Current Lake. Day 5 is a day for exploring the east side of the park, maybe the things that you didn't see when you drove over going to the sun because you just stayed on the west side. And the great thing about coming in from the east side this year is you don't need a reservation, so you're allowed to come and go as you please. You absolutely need to stop at St. Mary Lake. It has been the filming location for films like The Shining, weirdly. And it's a really beautiful spot and one of the most famous pictures that you're going to find when you're looking up Glacier National Park. I've also had some clients say that they would like to go to Goat Haunt and up into Canada to check out Waterton. This would be the day that I would recommend you do that since there's not a lot going on. It's kind of a free-for-all, so if you're there for 5 days, I would definitely recommend making the trip up and maybe even back down again depending on where you're choosing to stay on the east side. Having said that, Goat Haunt is an amazing spot for hiking and you don't need to end up crossing the border. You just start your hikes from that area and enjoy from there. Day number 6, we're going to stay on the east side of the park and we're going to go back to that mini glacier area and check out Iceberg Lake. Iceberg Lake is one of my favorite hikes in the park, probably after Grinnell. And I would say it's a great hike for intermediate hikers. It's really not that difficult and the payoff is incredible. If you really want to see that beautiful aquamarine water that Glacier is known for, this is the hike for you. I would definitely recommend bringing your lunch with you and also plenty of water, especially if you are visiting during the summer months because it does get really hot. It's a very open hike. There isn't a lot of shade. So we were pretty thirsty by the end of it for sure. This is also a really popular hike for bears. So again, bringing your bear spray, watching out for moose, just being aware is going to be really important. However, if this isn't sounding appealing to you and you would like something a little easier, definitely check out Two Medicine. Two Medicine is an amazing quiet area of the park. There are some really incredible, beautiful hikes that are easier, some really lovely waterfalls, opportunities for wildlife sightings. I definitely recommend it. And I have a whole video on Two Medicine that breaks down what you should do and how to visit as well. On your last day, you're gonna head over back to the west side because that'll make it easier for you to fly out from Kalispell. You're going to hit up Pole Bridge, the Pole Bridge Mercantile, and the North Fork area of the park. Like going to the Sun Road and Mini Glacier, you will need a reservation for the North Fork area as well, so that's why it's super important to know which spots require reservations and when. You're also going to want to keep in mind that this year there's a lot of construction in that area, so you might not be able to access certain areas that you would want to, such as Bowman and Kintla Lake, just because there's a lot of construction going on. One thing you have to do though if you are headed to the North Fork is go to the Polebridge Mercantile and grab one of those bear claw pastries. It's become a really famous thing to do. I personally am not sure why, but people are really into it, make it a big part of their bucket list when they're headed to Glacier to get one of these pastries. So if you are a pastry lover and you love huckleberries, I don't know. I guess you need to go to this spot. I do recommend they're getting really early though, because before afternoon they're completely sold out. You're gonna have a really difficult time getting them. So as early as you can, the better. Might even be best to enter in before reservations at 6, just because then that way you know for sure you're getting your bear claw. All right, whew. We're done. We went through the itinerary. We finished. I'm gonna give you a few options too for food, just because when you're doing all of this, you might not know where to stop and eat. So just a really quick overview of some of the options you have near the park. Frida's is one I recommend just because it's super convenient. You're on the shores of Lake McDonald. It's easy to get in and out of. It's just really simple to grab some food there. If you want a fancier option, the Belton Chalet has their amazing grill with world-class food and cuisine. Obviously, that means it's a little bit on the pricier side, but it is right outside the park, which is super convenient, and the food is delicious. All right, I'm gonna give you some quick tips to make the most of your Glacier National Park itinerary, and so you go in feeling super prepared. Number one is knowing what to pack, making sure that you have the correct layers and everything you need in order to enjoy your days in Glacier, because if you don't have the right things, it can just make it pretty miserable in general. Obviously, make sure to bring a rain jacket no matter what, comfortable shoes that you know will support you on your hike, and that important bear spray if you are planning on taking on any of the hikes in Mini Glacier or even into Medicine. I also recommend that you plan your hikes ahead of time, and that can be difficult if parking lots are filled up quickly or you're just not familiar with the area and you're not sure which hikes will be best for you. I definitely recommend that you check out my blog post on the best hikes in Glacier National Park, just so you can get an idea of which hikes might be best for you and the amount of time you have. As mentioned before, you are likely to run into some wildlife, especially if you are heading to each side of the park like I recommended in this itinerary. Remember to give wildlife plenty of space, and again, know how to interact with each of them, because every animal is a little bit different if you have an encounter, so having that general knowledge before you go in is more likely to keep you, well, alive. I also recommend that you visit some of these places during off hours. I mentioned maybe getting in before the 6 a.m. requirement for the reservations, just because you can get more parking. You're likely to find a spot way more. There also are not going to be the crowds that there would be if you are going in during some of those peak hours. Afternoon is also a great underrated time that many people don't know about, because it stays late, so late in Montana during the summer months. You can actually enter in around 3 and get a big chunk of the park done and explored before it gets dark. I also recommend checking out a ranger-led program if you can. They have that information on the Glacier National Park website, when you can find those ranger programs are led and which ones might be of interest to you. It's amazing. We checked a few out last year, and it's just another way to learn about the park from the experts. All right, I'm gonna answer some quick FAQs about visiting Glacier and your itinerary. One question is obviously, how much does it cost to get into Glacier? And most likely what you will do if you are not buying your annual parks pass, which gives you access to all the national parks for a year. I highly recommend buying this pass if you are visiting more than 3 national parks within a year. But if you're just planning on visiting Glacier for a few days, then you're going to want to buy just the weekly pass, which is $35. If Glacier is your only park as well, you can buy an annual pass for $70 that will give you access all year round. Another question I also get is how long does it take to drive from one end of Going to the Sun Road to the other? And the answer is that it really depends. The road is 51 miles long. It seems like it should take about an hour, but with traffic and then we've had construction over the past few years, it often takes a lot longer to do so. Plus, you're not going 60 miles an hour on the road. In many spots, you're going 25 miles an hour. So it can take about 2 to 2.5 hours to fully complete the road if you are planning on going from one end to the other. And I would actually build in even a little bit more time than that, just depending on, again, construction, crowds, etc. Another question I get is how do I avoid the crowds in Glacier? And there is no real good way to avoid the crowds because the season is so limited in Glacier. You have a ton of people coming all around the same time. So you're just gonna have to deal with a lot of people being in that spot. Getting up early or coming in later in the afternoon is usually the best way to go. Maybe checking out some areas of the park that are lesser known can help you kind of avoid that mass group of people. Of course, if this is your first time in Glacier, you're gonna wanna see the highlights, so you might just have to accept that you are going to be dealing with a lot of people. One thing that you can do that I highly recommend if you don't wanna deal with parking, which who does, is taking the Glacier National Park shuttle. Every spot on Going to the Sun Road that you would want to get off on, it will stop at. So it can be a great way to avoid all the parking issues. And again, if you don't want to actually drive Going to the Sun Road, they will do it for you. I hope this itinerary has given you a well-rounded idea of what you should see on your Glacier National Park trip, especially if you have limited time to about a week. Now, if we want to talk beyond that, I'm happy to. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see, and I will either make a video about that or respond. I really tried to give you an idea of how to see as much as you possibly can within a limited amount of time. If you want more videos about Glacier and other national parks, I definitely recommend that you subscribe and hit that bell notification because I am here to answer your Glacier National Park questions or any other questions you might have about the national parks.